Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today's question was suggested by a viewer, thanks to Dylan for this one. Amy goes to Chapter 3 of her Elspeth Conquers Death, while she controls Tom Bombadil. Except there are no creatures or planeswalkers in any graveyards. Does she get a new saga with Tom's ability? Alright, so we can see that Tom Bombadil's ability triggers when the final chapter ability of a saga resolves. By the way, Narci has the exact same trigger condition, so all these rulings would apply the same if we were talking about that card. Now, resolving means that an ability's instructions are followed and its effects happen. Unfortunately, in the case described in the original problem statement, that's not what's going to happen. When you're putting a triggered ability onto the stack, one of the things that you have to do is declare the targets, just like if you were casting a spell. Since there are no creatures and planeswalkers in Amy's graveyard, it is not possible to declare a legal target for this ability, meaning that the Elspeth Conquers Death's Chapter 3 ability will just get removed from the stack. Since it did not resolve, Tom Bombadil's ability will not trigger. The ruling would be exactly the same if the final chapter ability didn't resolve for any other reason. For example, let's say that Nick countered the Chapter 3 ability. Or maybe Amy had a creature card that she targeted, but Nick removed it from the graveyard in response. In the case where all the targets of an ability are found to be illegal when it tries to resolve, the ability gets removed from the stack with no effect, just like what happens if you can't pick legal targets when the ability tries to go onto the stack. Interestingly, if there were a Grafdigger's Cage out and Amy had a creature card to target, then the Elspeth Conquers Death Chapter 3 ability can still resolve. It's just that nothing will happen when you try to follow the ability's instructions. If there was a Containment Priest rather than a Grafdigger's Cage, then the creature would be exiled rather than entering the battlefield, but the ability of Elspeth Conquers Death would still have resolved. In each of these two cases, Tom Bombadil would trigger even though the stuff that was supposed to happen when the final chapter ability resolved either didn't or got replaced with something else. Ready for some challenge questions to test your understanding? Let's say that Amy has the 3 seasons go to Chapter 3, and she only has 2 cards in her graveyard. Will Tom Bombadil trigger? First, as a brief aside, officially you do not sacrifice a saga that's on its last chapter ability until after that ability has left the stack. This means it is not possible for the 3 seasons to shuffle itself back in. As to the question of whether Tom will trigger here, the answer is yes. There are no targets for the 3 seasons Chapter 3 ability, so we don't need to care about any of the checks on legality of targets blocking it from resolving. Even if it is not possible to fully perform all the actions the instructions specify, the ability still counts as having resolved. Even if no one has any cards in their graveyard, like if Nick popped a Relic of Progenitus in response to that ability, that doesn't matter at all. The Chapter 3 ability will still resolve. Next, what if Amy had the Bath Song going to Chapter 3, but Nick has an unlicensed hearse? There are 3 cards in Amy's graveyard. Can she get Tom Bombadil to trigger? Okay, so Amy probably doesn't want to choose 1 or 2 targets here, because if she does, Nick can just respond by using the hearse to exile the ones that she's targeting. And then when the Chapter 3 ability tries to resolve, the targets will all be illegal, so it won't resolve. But look, the Bath Song says that you can choose any number of targets, and 0 is a number, so if Amy chooses 0 targets, there's nothing that the unlicensed hearse will be able to do about that. Even if the ability doesn't really do anything, it still counts as resolving. But what if Amy wanted to do something? Well, it turns out that she actually can do better. If she chooses all 3 of the cards in her graveyard, then Nick will only be able to exile 2 of them. That means that when the Chapter 3 ability goes to resolve, it will still have 1 legal target remaining. This being the case, the ability will resolve, doing as much as it can and shuffling that 1 legal target back into Amy's library and making Tom trigger. Pretty cool, right? To wrap it up, for the purposes of abilities like Tom Bombadil's, there's a big difference between an ability that doesn't resolve and one that resolves but doesn't do anything. In general, that difference is targets. If an ability does not have any targets, then it will resolve, even if the rules, or a card effect, or some quirk of the game state makes it impossible to do what the ability's instructions say, or replaces it with something else. If some, but not all, of an ability's targets are not legal when the ability tries to resolve, that's fine. The ability will still resolve, it just won't affect the illegal targets. On the other hand, if all of an ability's targets are illegal when it tries to resolve, or if it isn't possible to pick a legal target for all of the targets an ability requires, that ability will be removed from the stack and it won't be considered to resolve. Sometimes an ability will make targeting optional or require a variable number of targets using a template like up to n targets or any number of targets. In such cases, it may be possible to strategically pick targets to reduce the chances of getting bitten by that rule. Other times, you won't be as lucky and the targets will all be required. Read carefully because, as you can see, there's a lot of variability here. But that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling, but until then, I hope you have a great day.